The thing is for me though, and why I'm sticking with a Missouri pick in this game is that I just think this is Missouri's get right spot. It's not backs against the wall. They're not desperate by any means. They have one loss, but it's like you come back home. I know you've got Alabama looming on the schedule. You're back in front of your home crowd. It's on homecoming. I think if you're Missouri, you're feeling, okay, let's get back in front of this home crowd. Let's execute a little bit better and show that we are much better than that Texas A&M game indicated. Obviously, Auburn's got feeling a little bit of pressure too, but I still would feel more comfortable going with Missouri on its home field with all the problems Auburn has had this season.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Hello and welcome into this week's edition of Mizzou That's Who here on KC Sports Network, your podcast for Missouri athletics at KCSN. Got a special episode for you guys today. Super excited to have Nathan King of 24/7 Auburn beat reporter with us today to talk about the Auburn Tigers. No Maggie Johnson with us today. She's not joining us. Just me and Nathan hanging out here. Nathan, appreciate you taking the time, hopping on the podcast to talk a little Mizzou Auburn. Tigers versus Tigers.
Yeah, for sure. Looking forward to getting down there this weekend. Looking forward to what should be an interesting game. Not necessarily sure what to expect on either side. Should be interesting.
It's never really been a normal football game when Auburn and Missouri play. And the times I can remember the last meeting coming, obviously, between those hedges down there. You have Nate Pete throwing the ball out the back of the end zone in overtime for an Auburn victory. A wild game in general from that side of things for both of those teams. And it might be in store for another one because the vibes of this game, it seems like there's some importance for both teams heading into this one just in terms of the directions of the program.
Yeah, I mean, on the Auburn side of things, look, 2-4 is not where they thought they would be at this point in the season. Yeah, I was somebody who leaned more toward six or seven wins for this group rather than, some thought maybe 8 or 9 would be on the table for Hugh Freeze in year 2. But now they're in a position where, they're just fighting to get to a bowl game, which is obviously not where they wanted to be at all. Turnovers have been the main storyline for this Auburn team so far. They have cut down in their past couple games, but they threw a killer pick 6 against Oklahoma in a game they led by 11 in the fourth quarter. And then Georgia, they played okay, but you're just, you've got to play really, really well to beat Georgia on the road. And obviously they didn't. And so 2-4 at this point in the season. Yeah, you're exactly right. Auburn's in a spot pretty much where they have to win at least one of their next 2 games. They go to Missouri and they go to Kentucky. They got to win at least one of those or else they are probably staring a losing season in the face because otherwise they'd have to beat Alabama and Tuscaloosa, and that's just not something they've done recently.
Yeah, that's even tough, though. I know there's a lot of people down kind of on the Kalen DeBoer Tide and how they've gone, but they've beat Alabama at home. I know they do lose to Vanderbilt, but look, Missouri's win over Vanderbilt's even better and better each week. That's how at least we're spinning it over in Columbia when we head into there. But coming into the season, Nathan, there was some question. I don't know if there was a ton of questions around quarterback, but there had been some questions with Peyton Thorne and how he was going to do. How do you think that this Auburn offense is Peyton Thorne?
You look at the performance against Oklahoma, and it was great until it wasn't. Right, he made every play in that game. Auburn's offense looked pretty decent against a good Oklahoma defense. I mentioned that pick 6, just a killer mistake. I mean, you mentioned the quarterback questions in the offseason. A lot of people wondered whether Hugh Freeze should go get a quarterback. Peyton Thorne was the least efficient starter in the SEC last year. He decides not to. He decides to run it back with Thorne, and the idea was, hey, they'll improve the rest of the offense around him. They'll get better at receiver, which they have done, and they'll lean on what's the top returning rusher in the SEC, one of the better running backs in the league, in Jarquez Hunter. And again, just the turnovers have really underscored that. It's really been a big issue for them. Peyton Thorne threw 4 interceptions against Cal. Got benched the next game. They went to Hank Brown for a couple games, a redshirt freshman. He threw 3 picks against Arkansas, and so they ended up going back to Thorne. I think Thorne gives, and Freeze has said it, I mean, he gives them the best chance to win right now. That is good for Peyton Thorne, but that doesn't say a lot about this quarterback room right now that he is their best option. I would really expect them to go back in the portal and look for a guy this offseason. They've done a better job recruiting, so Auburn obviously hopes moving forward that a guy like Peyton Thorne is not their best option anymore, but he'll be the guy against Missouri, and he has been playing better the past couple weeks. This offense has a decent explosion rate through the air. They just don't convert third downs very well. They've had some fourth down issues, some timely turnover on downs, and then we mentioned the turnover issues. They didn't have a turnover against Georgia. They were able to cut down on that, but still just lack of consistent execution for them. But look, Thorne's a 6-year senior. He's a guy who's done it before. He's been around the block. He's a 4-time team captain going back to his time at Michigan State. And so he's pretty unkillable at this point. Like, really nothing's going to faze him. It's not the best quarterback in the league. He's probably toward the bottom right now, but he is the guy that they're continuing to lean on for the rest of the season.
It's interesting there too. You mentioned the quarterback of look. Everybody, the backup quarterback is always the most popular guy, right? Missouri fans have seen that for a little bit as they had Connor Bazelak, then went to Brady Cook. Missouri fans have been calling for Sam Horn to get some snaps at quarterback for a while. Obviously, he can't get any this year because he tore his he had Tommy John surgery because he played baseball, so they don't have that there. So backup quarterback's always going to be the most popular guy. Then you see the backup quarterback get in there, and he's not very popular anymore. So that whole experiment there with Auburn and the offensive side of the ball is going to be really interesting. Does two defenders coming out of the UMass game for the season, and more Jacobs as well. How do you kind of see this Auburn offense stacking up against a Missouri defense that I think is kind of quietly surprised this year?
Yeah, I mean, Hugh Freeze had a lot of great things to say about Corey Batoon. That's a guy who worked with him off the field all the way going back to their Arkansas State days. He was with him at Ole Miss. I believe he was a special teams coordinator and a safeties coach for him at Ole Miss. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people were interested what would happen with Blake Baker out of the picture. Missouri has done a good job on that side of the ball, not losing a ton of steps. And pointing to that Texas A&M game is something Hugh Freeze talked about, where he said, look, on the road, it can get away from you really quickly at times. It's not necessarily the best indictment of a team overall when you look at their very worst day, a game like Texas A&M where pretty much everything went wrong. For Auburn, I mean, it's going to be an RPO system. That's how it's been all year. This is a team that's kind of slowed things down the last few games, though. And something that was a focus during the bye week was they got to get Jarquez Hunter more carries. And so I would expect a steady dose of him. Haven't necessarily dived in that much to see how good Missouri's run defense is, but that's going to be a key in this game because, look, Jarquez Hunter, he's the number 4 or 5 rusher in the SEC right now. Good average right now in terms of yards per carry, but he's only got in the end zone 3 times, and he's only averaging 13 carries a game. And so it's like that he is one of the more efficient runners in the league when he touches the football. But I think, Hugh Freeze is very scheme dependent. He's really going to lock in and stick to a game plan. I think maybe coming out of this bye week, he's in a position where you're kind of taking a step back and self-scouting and saying 27 is one of your best players on the team. You just got to feed him the football. And so I would expect a steady dose of Jarquez Hunter in this game. The Auburn receiving corps, I mentioned them before. This is one of the better groups they've had probably since the last time they were in Columbia, there in 2017. This is a really quality group. Keandre Lambert-Smith is a guy who's probably going to be all SEC by the end of the season. Again, for them, it just comes down to consistency. They've got Cam Coleman. He's a 5-star freshman. He's made great plays. Other games, he's had drops. He's kind of disappeared. And so for them, it's all about getting that consistency. Obviously, that goes back to quarterback play. This is a game where Auburn really wants to put things together on the offensive side of the ball. It's going to be a difficult spot to do it on the road, but it's, again, like we talked about, it's sort of an inflection point for them right now to try to get things going and try to win one of these next couple of games. I think they'll have a decent chance of scoring a little bit in Columbia, but the offensive line's got to hold up, and obviously Peyton Thorne has got to go out there and show that he can consistently execute over the course of 4 quarters.
You talked about the bye week, and you mentioned coming off of the bye week. Looking at the schedule, 6 games in a row that this Auburn team played before they do hit their bye week in week 7. Missouri's, I think their bye weeks are spaced out pretty good. I think they went 4 games and they have a bye week. They play 4 more, then they have another bye week. That's ideal. That's kind of how you want it there. Split it up into thirds. Talk about kind of how maybe later on in the season that this is without having that first bye. This first bye coming, and then looks like Auburn plays 3 more games and they have another bye. Kind of these byes a little close together. Did the bye seem needed from this team? Kind of the sense that you got, did it seem like they were kind of needing to get to this bye week?
Yeah, absolutely. Even just aside from their 2-4 record, it was a situation where they needed to take a step back and look at the things that they weren't doing to execute. Again, the turnovers are one thing. They didn't have a ton of injuries. I mean, a couple injuries here and there, but any team needs to get healthy there at midseason. I really just think kind of taking a break. It coincided with the university's fall break, and so they only practiced for a couple days. Then players went home for the weekend. Some of the members of the 24 class, the freshmen, they went on a trip over the weekend, just kind of trying to clear their heads. Obviously, this is a position Auburn did not want to be in at the start of the year. But yeah, you mentioned the weird start to the season. Auburn played 5 straight home games to open things up, and in an ideal world, I think that could have been a really good thing if you got off to a good start to the season. What it turned into for Auburn was they were almost grateful to go on the road against Georgia, because it's a little bit easier, I think, when you're not playing so well and you go on the road, because they were having to deal with the moaning and groaning from the fan base. I mean, you go 2-3 in your first 5 home games of the year. You have quarterback troubles. They're trying to bench they bench Peyton Thorne. He's getting booed off the field. The offense is getting booed off the field. There's just a lot of pressure, I think, that comes with that. So maybe going on the road to Georgia, then immediately into a bye week. Obviously, this team is hoping that was a little bit of a detox from what was obviously a really bad start to the year.
Yeah, it seems like to me like playing 6 games in a row cannot be great on the old body either. Like, yeah, I mean, a lot of these guys, when it comes down to it, especially in the offensive line positions, they did the trenches, those positions where we're seeing Missouri getting a lot of attrition in their defensive line on that side of the ball. Like the bye week is kind of needed with the way that it's placed, but then having 3 more games and then another bye week is certainly an interesting scheduling decision. But look, at the University of Missouri, we can't talk about interesting scheduling decisions because we just went to play UMass. So I mean, there is. You guys don't have UMass on the schedule, right? No, it's Alabama. It's got
last year they did actually in Auburn. Certainly not at Amherst.
What is up with all these SEC schools scheduling UMass? I mean, I get it. They're an independent, so they had to like fill the schedule up. But like, good on Auburn for not having to go to Amherst to land that deal. I guess I don't know why, because Missouri also had Boston College on their schedule a little bit. Obviously, as they came to Columbia this year, but the first time they played them, they were in Boston. So it's like one of those things where they trying to recruit the East Coast. I don't know, like what leads you to the decisions to want to go out to Massachusetts as a Midwest team. I don't get it. I don't get a lot of these scheduling things. It probably comes down to the SEC needing to allow 9 conference games to happen. Like that should probably happen sooner rather than later. But I don't know. Well, I mean, we'll probably get a make conference before that happens.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Eli just wanted to see the foliage.
That's true.
This time of year is what we were kind of wondering. I mean, for Auburn, I mean, they've been in a situation where they had to play all the way out at Cal last year. Yeah, obviously, that return game for them did not go as planned this year. But talking about that game last year, Hugh Freeze said he looked at the schedule like a few days after he got hired. I'm sure somebody just handed him a piece of paper, and he was going over his first year, and he looked around the room and he said, "Who in the world scheduled us to go 2,500 miles across the country to Cal?" But like you said, I mean, if we get to a position where it's SEC versus Big Ten, a little more often, or you get into these situations like the ACC has, like the Big Ten has, where you have to go cross country. I mean, we're seeing Big Ten teams do that every single week, and at the same time, we're seeing the effect it has on them. I don't think teams that have traveled cross country have played very well this season up until Penn State pulled out that game. So yeah, but it was interesting to see Missouri. That was kind of a trivia question for me before this season was guess where Missouri plays before they play Auburn, and nobody could get it off the top of their head. Yeah, very strange schedule.
Yeah, and just the fact of it coming in the middle of the season too was also in the middle of the SEC schedule. Very odd. Anyway, I mean, but like, I always find college scheduling very humorous, right? And the deals that they work out and everything like that. A lot of it done is probably for recruiting, and that deal was done like 2 athletic directors ago for Missouri. So like,
right, long time in advance.
The fact that athletic directors too can have that much impact on a future of a university is maybe telling about how much power that these schools give them. But I do think that this Auburn, and as I mentioned earlier, like there's never been a normal game. One of the memorable ones, obviously, is Trey Mason running all over Missouri in the SEC championship. It just seems like there's always these memories with Auburn and Missouri when they get together of something abnormal happening. But I think the weather's supposed to be a little bit cooler in Columbia too. This might be one of the first colder weather games that these two teams will be playing in this year. And if you're looking for some cold weather gear, if you're heading out to Columbia Memorial Stadium, they got some construction started underway, but you can get suited and booted with home field apparel. Go to homefieldapparel.com. You can use code Mizzou24 for 15% off. I almost said 24 for 15% off your first order at Home Field Apparel. They got hoodies, they got sweatshirts, they've got bomber jackets. They've got everything you need for the fall weather if you're heading on out there to Memorial Stadium at Faurot Field. Go check them out. We really do appreciate you guys supporting them. They support us. So it all is one big happy family there. We're going to take a break. On the other side, we're going to talk about the Missouri offense against the Auburn defense coming up right after this.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your number one source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com. With Mint Mobile, you can say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plan's jaw-dropping monthly bills and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at just $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. And if you're worried about losing your phone or phone number or contacts, with Mint Mobile you can bring all of that over to join Mint Mobile's plan. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for just $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and a new 3-month wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/KCSNMTW. That's mintmobile.com/KCSNMTW. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/KCSNMTW. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Talking Tigers versus Tigers here on Mizzou. That's who, hanging out with Nathan King of Auburn Undercover, host of the Auburn Undercover podcast as well. You can find that wherever you get your podcast. Go check them out. And he's the Auburn beat reporter for 24/7 Sports as well. Nathan, let's talk about this Missouri offense because it is a unit that has a lot of firepower in terms of the potential of the skill players that they have on there. The wide receiver room, obviously highly touted wide receiver room, but maybe some potential that hasn't necessarily lived up to the billing so far this season. Going up against that Auburn defense, how early feels on kind of how those two units match up against each other?
Yeah, the receiver matchup from the Missouri side of things is one I think that scares Auburn a little bit. It's a young cornerback group for them. Kay and Lee is their number one player. That matchup I'm really looking forward to. He's a guy they think has NFL potential. He hasn't put it all together right away, but has been pretty solid so far this year. He's their number one corner. But that position in particular, that cornerback spot for them, has just been through it since the spring. They had 2 potential contributors transfer out back in the spring, lost another potential contributor to a season-ending ACL injury during summer workouts. They switched over their nickel, Keontae Scott, to corner. That didn't work out. He wasn't playing well. They moved him back to nickel. They moved the nickel out to corner, Champ Anthony. He plays incredible, suffers a season-ending leg injury against Arkansas. And so, and then the Alabama transfer, Antonio Kite. They bring him in. Looks like he maybe has an opportunity there. He hasn't played in the last 2 games. Literally has not seen the field. I just think that they've found other options that they like more than him. All of that is to say they're in a position now where after Kay and Lee, it's 2 true freshmen. Jay Crawford will be the starter across from him. I guess he'll go up against Theo Weiss pretty often. And then Kinsley Lador-Faustin is a 4-star guy who is going to be a safety / nickel. He was working there all offseason. A couple weeks ago, we saw him rep at corner in practice. We were like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe they're trying to develop him there. He's on the field in the first drive at corner against Georgia. And it's like, that really goes to show where this group is at right now. Lots of potential with them. I really like Jay Crawford. I think he can be a great player. He's been good so far. That is going to be a really big test, though. In terms of Durkin's defense overall this year, good, not great. Like they have not been the reason Auburn has lost games. Is probably the best compliment you can pay to them, and they've been on the field way more than they should have. I mean, Auburn's not only turned the ball over a bunch, they're tied for last in the FBS, I think, or second to last in turnover margin on the season. But I mentioned the turnover on downs earlier. They've had so many extra possessions out there. I'm more interested to see. I think that this top end talent for Missouri is really, really good. But like you said, they haven't necessarily gotten it going when they've needed to over the course of the season. And so, again, this is a really motivated Auburn defense. Their pass rush has been pretty solid. That's probably one of the better parts of this team. Keldrick Falk and Jalen McLeod have been 2 of the better pass rushers in the league so far. If they can get after Brady Cook, that'll make things easier on the aforementioned secondary that's got a lot of young pieces in it right now.
That's a good point you bring that up, too, because Brady Cook hasn't looked totally comfortable in the pocket. And they hasn't looked totally comfortable trusting his offensive line either. They did get some transfers with Marcus Bryant on the left side, obviously losing Javon Foster to the NFL, and they get Caden Green, who played left tackle at Oklahoma, now moved into a left guard role for Missouri. And look, they've been messing with some stuff. They messed with some stuff last week against UMass, which a game you can mess with some stuff with, right? In terms of the formations and everything of how they want to configure that offensive line, just to see if they can get Brady more comfortable back there. And if the defensive line is able to cause some havoc back there with Brady, I think Missouri fans as a whole don't really feel comfortable with Brady having to make decisions under pressure, maybe like they had to last year. Like, I think this year is a completely different year for Brady Cook and how he's kind of performed. He kind of went back to what we saw maybe 2 years ago rather than what we saw last year with Brady Cook. Last year, Brady Cook played really well. They were getting the ball out of his hand quick, getting into those playmakers, those Theo Weises, those Luther Burdens. And, I mean, you even see it, too, against UMass. You see Luther Burden go 61 yards around the end to just out-athlete everybody. And you can do that against UMass. There's difference in some rosters like we hit the SEC in terms of the athletes that you got there. I would love to see them get the ball into Luther Burden's hands a little bit more as they get deeper into these SEC schedule for a guy that, you anticipated him to be on the Biletnikoff watch list, who wasn't from what I saw, as we head into kind of these semifinal watch lists and get closer into these award watch list season. When I look at this Auburn defense, Nathan, I like to go to our lads and check out. I don't know if you're familiar with our lads. They do a lot of depth charts there. Yep. I like to go to our lads to check it out and see how they have it categorized. I scrolled down to the defense for this Auburn team, and there is a lot of gold on that page. There's a lot of new bodies in that Auburn defense as a new addition, transfer, or freshman. How have those new additions kind of meshed with the Auburn defense so far this year?
Yeah, looking at it right now, I know it's just like nobody knows what that website is, I think, for sure, but everybody knows like what it is. They know the name. It's just kind of randomly has good depth charts. I mean, I'm looking at this one now. It's decently accurate. I mentioned Antonio Kite being a guy that's not in the rotation anymore, but it's got those names on there. Yeah. You mentioning the new guys in there, it's mostly been, it's been a youth movement for this Auburn defense, and that hasn't necessarily been a bad thing. Everyone knows the position that this Auburn roster has been in. Everybody knows kind of the depths they fell to under Brian Harsin in terms of recruiting, and obviously the cachet for Hugh Freeze bringing him in was, hey, he's a guy who developed that Ole Miss roster, one of the better recruiters in the league. We've seen it so far. They have a chance for the number one class in 2025. So it's not a huge surprise that some of these guys they brought in the freshman class are a little bit better than some of the players who've been on the roster. It's not a big surprise. They brought in 4 Power 4 transfers on the defensive line this year. They were all rotational guys. It's not maybe a huge surprise that a guy like Malik Blockton, who's the younger brother of an Auburn NFL draft pick, like it's not a huge surprise that guy comes in and has the potential to be better than them. Some young names to know, a couple that I didn't touch on. I mentioned Jay Crawford, who's going to play a lot at corner. 18 on defense is a guy Missouri fans need to be aware of. They've got a true freshman playing at safety. His name's Caleb Harris. Been just an absolute thumper so far this season, a guy who can come down and a really, really physical player. I believe he has the top true freshman grade for a defensive back so far in the SEC this season. And then a really interesting player for Missouri fans, keep an eye on, as we talked about pass rush, DeMarcus Riddick, number 16 on defense. Just kind of his own, I don't even know how to necessarily describe him, just sort of a hybrid linebacker. Talking to some Auburn staff members, he's got his own position. Like, he's not necessarily playing any one spot. They started spying him against Michael Hawkins, the Oklahoma quarterback, and realized, like, you can just kind of put him on the edge. You can kind of put him in space, really athletic youngster, and let him go out there and make plays, let him go out there and set the edge. So they've let him do that the past couple of weeks. Obviously, Brady Cook has a decent bit of mobility. He's not Michael Hawkins. He's not going to take off and run as often, and so I'll be interested to see what they kind of game plan with a guy like Riddick. But yeah, this defense is, look, they've done a good job bringing in young talent. That is probably the most promising part of this entire team looking forward. Spinning this thing second half of this year, spinning it in 2025, is saying they've got some dudes on defense. They've got some good, looking young freshmen on offense. Can these guys continue to develop? The transfers on defense, Jaron Thompson, number 1, the safety, is a starter. Been a really consistent player. Came over from Texas, so not a huge surprise. Dorian Mausi is the starting middle linebacker, number 12. He's their leading tackler so far this year. Phillip Bleedy is the defensive tackle, defensive end, who's been pretty decent so far this year. And so, again, not necessarily, so far, other than Keldrick Falk, who can probably be first team All SEC, he's one of the better ends in the conference right now. Other than him, not really a lot of superstars on this defense. Again, good, not great is kind of where I would characterize them at right now, if the offense starts, holding its end of the bargain a little bit better, that'll obviously put them in a good position moving forward.
One of the big things for this Missouri offense too is they've kind of tried to find their way with the deep passing and just the passing game in general. They've been able to run the ball pretty well, and that's kind of been a calling card of Missouri for a while. They get these guys, they get your Cody Schraders, they get your Tyler Beatties, they get all of these guys, Larry Roundtrees, to come in there, and they block it up pretty well. They run the football pretty efficiently when it comes down to it. You're seeing that now with Marcus Carroll. You're seeing that with not Nate Pete, but you're seeing it from different sides of the football. They are able to run the football. How do you think that kind of fares against Auburn's run defense, as Missouri's been so successful running the football?
Yeah, I think Auburn's run defense, has been better than the pass defense when you just kind of zoom out and make it pretty black and white. Like I said, Auburn's pass rush they've been okay. Haven't necessarily generated enough sacks. A guy like Keldrick Falk has been a really good player. But they've had some inconsistencies. They've had kind of some games that are picked apart in the secondary a little bit. That led to the changes that I already mentioned, guys moving around, them needing to move around players, try new things in the secondary. Run defense has been a little bit better. I can't necessarily recall a game where they were shredded on the ground. Georgia just kind of got things rolling, played ball control in the second half. I don't remember what their yardage got to, but against Cal, against Arkansas, against Oklahoma, they were able to hold serve pretty well. Interested to see, like you said, Missouri's got a pretty good 1-2 punch running the football, a couple experienced guys in there. And so I think, this will be a really good challenge for them. It falls on this defensive front as one of the more important position groups for this Auburn roster moving forward, because like I mentioned before, you've got a guy like Falk, you've got a guy like Mausi who's a good tackler. They need maybe one and a half more playmakers along the defensive line. Because as you know, that's where your bread is buttered in the SEC is the line of scrimmage. If you can find playmakers and find disruptors, on the defensive side of the ball, that was their big question going into the season. They knew Falk was a dude. He's a former fringe 5-star recruit. They knew he was going to be a really good player. So far, they need somebody else to step up and obviously take the attention off of him. You're starting to see him get double teams. You want somebody else to go in there and make an impact. And so I'm really interested. That will be one of the better matchups in this game because, like you mentioned, Missouri's passing game not necessarily hitting on the same cylinders that they were last year. If Auburn can slow down the run game, force them in 3rd and longs, they'll feel pretty good about remaining in this game over the course of 4 quarters. If Missouri's sitting at 100 rushing yards at halftime, that probably spells pretty bad things for Auburn.
Let's zoom out a little bit when we talk about this game. If Auburn is to win this game, Nathan, what do you think has to go right for them?
Yeah, on their side of things, it goes back to a lot of the conversations they've had during the bye week, executing situational football better. This is a team that if I were to take away the record, do one of those blind tests, and you looked at their yards per play on offense, their passing game efficiency, when you look at how they run the ball, when you look at how they've stopped the run, you'd probably think this is an okay team, not a contender by any means, doesn't have a bunch of wins by any means. You think this team's all right. I don't think you would have any idea this team is 2-4. The turnover problems have been massive, but the past 2 games have shown you what your problems are when you haven't turned the ball over. They've only had 1 turnover in their last 2 games. Granted, it was a huge one, a pick 6 late against Oklahoma, but these past 2 games have shown you what you need to accomplish otherwise. It's been little situational things, and that's what Hugh Freeze talked about. When the moments get really big, not crumbling. You look at the Oklahoma game, they had a 4th and inches in the first half, they get stopped, get stuffed away. If you had gotten a touchdown there, you probably wouldn't have lost that game. Time management was really bad before halftime. They missed a 27-yard field goal because they had to rush their true freshman kicker just onto the field as fast as they can. He couldn't get it set in time to make the field goal. Another 4th and 1. They're only down by 11 against Georgia in the 4th quarter, and they probably wouldn't have won that game, but they're driving. Just some miscommunication. Peyton Thorne changes the play at the last second. Nobody had any idea. He's dropped in the backfield. Their red zone percentage hasn't been very good. All of these things that you have to win these facets of the game. That's kind of a long, rambling way to say 3rd down conversions in this game for Auburn. If they get into a 4th down where they roll the dice on a 4th and 2, pick that thing up and keep the drive moving. And then taking advantage of opportunities. If you're an Auburn fan in this game and you're kind of just moaning and groaning about some missed opportunities here and there, this probably isn't a game you're going to win. Now, Missouri has not been a killer so far this year, so I think you can afford to not play impeccably on both sides of the ball, but certainly not turning the ball over, trying to execute better in situational football. That's on the Auburn side of things. In terms of Missouri, I mean, like you said, they don't need to have these receivers go crazy against young Auburn corners. The thing is for me though, and why I'm sticking with a Missouri pick in this game is that I just think this is Missouri's get right spot. It's not backs against the wall. They're not desperate by any means. They have one loss, but it's like you come back home. I think you've got Alabama looming on the schedule. You're back in front of your home crowd. It's on homecoming. I think if you're Missouri, you're feeling, okay, let's get back in front of this home crowd. Let's execute a little bit better and show that we are much better than that Texas A&M game indicated. Obviously, Auburn's got feeling a little bit of pressure too, but I still would feel more comfortable going with Missouri on its home field with all the problems Auburn has had this season.
I did mention the series. I've mentioned the series kind of all time. Looking at this is from the Mizzou's athletic department. Auburn enters with the series matchup with a 3-1 edge against Missouri, including the 2017 win over the Tigers in Columbia. Auburn has won each of the last 3 games in the series since Mizzou's moved to the SEC. Mizzou's lone win over Auburn came in the 1973 Sun Bowl over in El Paso. Look, you don't just walk into this other. I don't know about you, Nathan, but I'm going to be watching Utah play tonight, and they are dogs. I took them at home because they're home dogs, because you just don't walk into the Sun Bowl and anticipate to roll over those Miners. Missouri is 4-0 under Eli Drinkwitz at homecoming, too. This is his 5th homecoming game, a very interesting stat there. Maybe not a correlation, causation type of deal, but something definitely to take note of. I do think you made a really good point about this is kind of Missouri's spot to get back on track, to kind of figure some stuff out against some quality competition, too. A lot of the times we've seen Missouri flex their muscle on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, they scored a decent amount against UMass. They beat Buffalo. They beat Murray State. Like, those are the teams that their wins right now, outside of the Vanderbilt win. I'm calling that a good win. I'm calling that a good win now. They haven't been able to really flex their offensive muscle against a good competition. I'm excited to see this game. Excited to see how it shakes out. Again, like, this matchup of these two teams there's always some nonsense going on. There's always some craziness happen. So I am very excited for it to go down for homecoming as well. As you guys will make the trek up to Columbia. Appreciate you spending some time with us, Nathan. Let the people know where they can find you at.
Yeah, for sure. AuburnUndercover.com. You can find me on Twitter at NathanKing247. Going to continue to have preview type stories. On Thursday we'll have our staff wide predictions. I will say we've already got one staff member deciding to pick Auburn, which I thought was things to be a close game. It's a little bold though. Like I said, I'll still be sticking with Missouri. And then on Friday, Gerard Hamilton from Power Mizzou is going to stop by over on our message board and answer Auburn questions about Missouri. And so if you are a Power Mizzou subscriber, that means you can go check out our message board as well for free. You got access to all that. So go check us out, AuburnUndercover.com.
That's one thing I thought was really cool. Power Mizzou did just make the move over to 24/7. Gabe used to be on our podcast. We used to have Gabe on the podcast. He obviously took a step back. Now I can say why he took a step back, because people now see him on 24/7. And that's why part of the reason he's not on the podcast. But that was one of the really cool things going over to 24/7. I didn't realize. I had some people tell me, it's like, you can see all the boards. I was like, wait, you mean I can see every
good perk?
All the boards? Like, I don't have to pay for the Kansas board or pay for the Arkansas board if I want to see it. I can go look at them. It's pretty nice.
If you want to watch a meltdown, that is when I'm on it the most. Like Florida State losing early in the year, Alabama after the Vanderbilt game. Just get on there and just cruise for a little while. It's look, I'm sure people do it to Auburn after they've lost games earlier this year. It's a good time.
And people do it to Missouri as well, I'm sure. But Nathan, again, appreciate you taking some time out of your day talking this matchup for it. Really do appreciate that. That's going to do it for this week's edition of Mizzou That's Who here on KC Sports Network. Be a friend, tell a friend about, as Patrick McAfee says, about the podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe to us on YouTube. I'll have the sim game up later on in the week. Also, be doing a post-game show as well. So stay locked in here at KC Sports Network. We got you covered. So I'm Tucker Franklin. We will talk to you guys next week.